The opulent grandeur of the Spencer Mansion usually serves as a fortress of solitude and power for Los Angeles' most formidable media mogul, Bill Spencer, and his reunited love, Katie Logan Spencer. On this particular evening, the sprawling estate is bathed in the warm, golden hues of sunset, projecting an illusion of tranquility and familial harmony. Inside the lavishly decorated living room, Katie, Bill, and Hope Logan Spencer are gathered, likely celebrating the monumental success of the Hope by Logan fashion launch and the ink drying on Hope's brand new, long-term contract. However, this fragile piece is utterly obliterated the moment the heavy mahogany front doors are thrown open with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. Brooke Logan Forrester has arrived, and she has not come to offer her maternal congratulations. Brooke's entrance is nothing short of theatrical, her every step echoing with the weight of absolute betrayal and unyielding maternal fury. She storms into the Spencer Mansion with a tempestuous energy that immediately sucks the oxygen out of the massive room. For days, Brooke has been simmering in a toxic stew of heartbreak and humiliation, watching her daughter publicly defect to a rival fashion house, completely blindsiding Forrester Creations and eclipsing Eric Forrester's highly anticipated haute couture return. But the final catalyst for this explosive intrusion is the devastating news that Hope has not just collaborated on a single line, but has officially signed a binding, long-term contract with Katie's company. To Brooke, this is not a business decision. It is an act of familial treason. The visual tableau in the Spencer living room is striking and fraught with unbearable tension. Hope, still riding the high of her creative independence and runway triumph, physically shrinks back at the sight of her mother's venomous glare. Katie stands tall, instinctively moving slightly in front of Hope in a protective stance, while Bill Spencer rises from his leather armchair, his jaw clenching as he senses the impending chaos. Brooke does not waste time with pleasantries or greetings. Her eyes, usually so full of warmth and adoration for her eldest daughter, are now twin pools of icy disdain. She looks at Hope not as a proud mother, but as a judge staring down a convicted traitor. The silence stretches, thick and suffocating, before Brooke finally unleashes the full, terrifying force of her wrath upon the room. Brooke's voice cuts through the air like a serrated blade, trembling with a volatile mixture of grief and unadulterated rage. She demands to know how Hope could be so incredibly foolish, so blindly naive, as to sign her entire future away to Logan Creations. Brooke views this long-term contract as a death sentence for Hope's legacy, a permanent severing of the ties that have bound them to the Forrester dynasty for decades. She accuses Hope of throwing away years of hard work, of spitting in the face of Ridge, Steffi, and Eric, and most importantly, of shattering the sacred trust between a mother and her daughter. Brooke's narrative is entirely self-centered in its grief. She cannot fathom that Hope made this choice for her own autonomy. In Brooke's mind, Hope has been manipulated, brainwashed, and stolen away by dark forces. Swiftly, Brooke redirects her blistering anger toward her younger sister. The historical resentment between Brooke and Katie has always been a simmering undercurrent, a complex web of shared history, stolen husbands, specifically Bill Spencer himself, and deep-seated insecurities. Tonight, that toxic undercurrent erupts into a geyser of pure hatred. Brooke viciously insults Katie, accusing her of being a pathetic, opportunistic vulture who is weaponizing Hope's temporary vulnerability for her own selfish gains. Brooke paints Katie as a bitter woman who, unable to secure her own legendary status in the fashion world, has resorted to cannibalizing her own family to build a rival empire. The accusations grow even more vile as Brooke claims that Katie's entire business strategy is rooted in petty, personal revenge. According to Brooke, Katie is still harboring deep-seated jealousy over Brooke's historical dominance in the Logan family and her enduring, albeit tumultuous, marriage to Ridge Forrester. By poaching Hope, Brooke argues, Katie is deliberately trying to destroy Brooke's happiness and dismantle the Forrester legacy piece by piece. Brooke portrays Katie not as a savvy CEO making a brilliant corporate acquisition, but as a vindictive, manipulative puppet master who has preyed on a confused, emotionally fragile young woman who was merely frustrated with Steffy Forrester's corporate roadblocks. Katie, refusing to cower in her own home, steps forward to meet her sister's fiery gaze. Katie attempts to inject logic into the hysterical atmosphere, fiercely defending Hope's right to make her own business decisions. Katie argues that Hope is a grown woman, a visionary talent who was being suffocated, disrespected, and creatively starved at Forrester Creations. She points out that Steffy had indefinitely shelved the Hope for the Future line, leaving Hope professionally paralyzed. Katie insists that she merely offered Hope a lifeline, a platform where her voice would be heard and her creative genius celebrated without the constant, oppressive oversight of the Forrester family. But logic is entirely lost on Brooke tonight. Seeing Katie actively defend Hope only pours gasoline on the raging inferno of Brooke's anger. Brooke views Katie's protective stance as the ultimate insult, a blatant usurpation of Brooke's role as Hope's mother. The tension in the room reaches an unbearable, suffocating peak. Brooke steps closer to Katie, invading her personal space, her voice dropping to a lethal, venomous hiss. She delivers a final, apocalyptic warning, a line drawn in the sand that will alter the landscape of the Logan family forever, tearing apart the sisterly bond that has survived decades of turmoil. With eyes blazing with an unholy fire, Brooke issues her devastating ultimatum directly to her daughter. She tells Hope that she has exactly one chance to rectify this colossal mistake. Hope must immediately tear up the long-term contract, walk away from Katie and Bill Spencer, and return to the Forrester fold where she belongs. If Hope refuses, if she chooses to remain loyal to Logan Creations, Brooke declares that the consequences will be absolute and irreversible. Brooke threatens to permanently erase Hope from the Logan family. It is a threat of total excommunication, a promise to sever the maternal bond and cast Hope out into the cold, effectively declaring her dead to the woman who gave her life. The sheer cruelty of the ultimatum hangs in the air, leaving Hope gasping for breath as tears begin to stream down her face. The psychological weight of being disowned by her own mother is a crushing, unbearable burden. Hope has spent her entire life trying to be the perfect daughter, the moral compass, the peacemaker who constantly sought Brooke's approval and validation. To have that approval not just withdrawn, but weaponized into a threat of permanent banishment shatters Hope's heart into a million irreparable pieces. She looks at Brooke, desperately searching for a flicker of maternal warmth, a sign that this is just a bluff born of anger, but she finds nothing but cold, unyielding stone. Seeing the utter devastation on Hope's face, Katie cannot remain silent. Her protective instincts flare into overdrive, overriding any lingering fear of her older sister. Katie steps squarely between Brooke and Hope, physically shielding her niece from the emotional onslaught. Katie raises her voice, demanding that Brooke stop this tyrannical abuse immediately. She tells Brooke that she has lost her mind, that she is acting like a dictator rather than a mother, and that forcing a child to choose between her career and her family is the most toxic, unforgivable form of manipulation imaginable. Katie's defiance is bold, righteous, and entirely unacceptable to a woman who is used to getting her way. In a fraction of a second, the verbal warfare escalates into shocking physical violence. Blinded by rage, feeling her authority challenged and her family slipping through her fingers, Brooke loses all sense of restraint. She raises her hand and strikes Katie across the face with a resounding, thunderous slap. The sharp crack of flesh against flesh echoes through the cavernous Spencer living room, a terrifying punctuation mark to the death of the Logan sisterhood. The physical impact sends Katie stumbling backward, her hand flying to her reddening cheek in absolute shock, her eyes wide with the realization that Brooke has crossed a physical line. The room descends into a stunned, paralyzed silence. Bill Spencer, who had been holding his temper by a mere thread, immediately lunges forward, placing himself between his wife and the unhinged intruder. Bill's eyes are dark with a lethal, terrifying fury as he glares at Brooke, silently daring her to make another move. The unspoken threat in Bill's posture is clear. If Brooke were not a woman, and if she were not Katie's sister, he would have thrown her through the plate glass window. The atmosphere is electric with danger, the invisible boundaries of civilized behavior having been completely obliterated by Brooke's violent, uncontrollable outburst. The sound of the slap breaks the fragile dam of Hope's emotions. She collapses into a fit of hysterical, heart-wrenching sobs. Hope falls to her knees, her hands reaching out in a desperate, pleading gesture toward the mother who just assaulted her aunt. Through her tears, Hope begs Brooke to stop the madness, to just listen and try to understand her perspective for one single minute. She cries out about her desperate yearning for independence, her need to step out of the suffocating shadows of Forrester Creations, and her desire to build something that is truly her own, free from the constant threat of Steffi's veto power and Ridge's preferential treatment. Hope's impassioned plea is a raw, bleeding wound laid bare on the floor of the Spencer mansion. She explains that this contract with Logan Creations is not about revenge, not about hurting Ridge, and certainly not about hurting her mother. It is about survival. It is about claiming her own identity as a designer and a businesswoman. She pleads with Brooke to look past the corporate rivalry and see the daughter who is finally spreading her wings, begging for the maternal pride and support that she so desperately craves in this monumental moment of her life. She asks Brooke to love her enough to let her grow. But Brooke is entirely impervious to her daughter's tears. The well of maternal empathy has completely dried up, replaced by a toxic, self-righteous indignation. Brooke looks down at the weeping, broken figure of her daughter with a gaze of absolute, chilling disdain. There is no pity in her eyes, no regret for the violence she just committed, and certainly no understanding of Hope's desire for autonomy. Instead, Brooke's lip curls into a sneer of profound disgust as she prepares to deliver a verbal blow that is far more damaging than the physical slap she gave Katie. With a voice dripping with contempt and venom, Brooke looks directly into Hope's tear-filled eyes and delivers the ultimate, unforgivable insult. She tells Hope that she is no longer the sweet, principled girl she raised. Instead, Brooke coldly declares that Hope has mutated into a monster, branding her as Luna Nozawa 2.0. The comparison is a devastating, apocalyptic insult. Luna Nozawa is universally despised, known as a manipulative, calculating gold digger, a usurper, and a ruthless murderer who left a trail of destruction in her wake. To equate her own flesh and blood to a serial killer and a sociopath is a level of psychological cruelty that defies comprehension. The sheer magnitude of the insult leaves Hope completely paralyzed, the air knocked from her lungs as if she had been physically gutted. The comparison to Luna Nozawa is not just an insult. It is a complete character assassination, a declaration that Brooke views Hope as a toxic, irredeemable villain. But Brooke is not finished tearing her daughter's life apart. Having severed the emotional and familial ties, Brooke moves swiftly to dismantle Hope's physical security. She pivots to her final, most extreme act of retribution, proving that her wrath knows absolutely no bounds and that she is willing to destroy everything to make her point. With the cold, calculating precision of an executioner, Brooke announces that she is officially revoking Hope's right to live on the Logan estate. The cabin, which has been a safe haven for Hope, Liam, and Little Beth for years, is situated on Brooke's property. Brooke declares that since Hope is no longer a part of the family, she no longer has the privilege of living on family land. And she is not giving them 30 days or even a week to pack their belongings. In an act of sheer, unadulterated extremism, Brooke demands that Hope and Liam vacate the cabin immediately. They are to be out on the streets tonight, cast out into the darkness by a mother's unforgiving decree. The cruelty of forcing her daughter, her son-in-law, and her young granddaughter out of their home in the dead of night is staggering. It is a vindictive, scorched earth tactic designed to inflict maximum pain and instability. Having delivered her final, devastating judgments, Brooke does not wait for a response. She turns on her heel, her posture rigid with self-righteous fury, and marches out of the Spencer mansion. The heavy mahogany door slams shut behind her with a resounding, final thud, echoing like the lid of a coffin closing on the Logan family's history, leaving a trail of absolute destruction in her wake. In the aftermath of Brooke's departure, the Spencer living room is left in a state of absolute, traumatized devastation. Hope remains crumpled on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of her mother's hatred sets in. Katie stands frozen, a hand still pressed to her stinging cheek, her eyes wide with disbelief at the monster her sister has become. Bill Spencer's face is a mask of lethal, barely contained rage. The sheer extremism of Brooke's actions, the physical assault, the psychological torture of her own daughter, and the cruel midnight eviction has ignited a fire in Bill and Katie. As they rally around a broken hope, a silent vow is made in the Spencer mansion. Brooke Logan Forrester has crossed a line from which there is no return. And the Spencer-Logan alliance will stop at nothing to protect Hope and make Brooke pay for her unforgivable sins. Unbeknownst to Steffi, the very foundation of her marital security has already been severely compromised by a desperate, high-altitude bargain. When Finn finally arrives in Monaco, his embrace is tight and filled with overwhelming love, yet his eyes carry the heavy, suffocating weight of a massive deception. During his commercial flight to Europe, Finn was horrified to discover Sheila Carter sitting in the cabin, having stolen his itinerary from an open laptop in Los Angeles. In a moment of pure panic and misguided protectiveness, Finn struck a dangerous, foolish deal with the devil. He promised to hide Sheila's presence from Steffi if Sheila swore to stay completely away from them upon landing. Now, standing in the sun-drenched streets of Monte Carlo, Finn's guilt is a corrosive acid eating away at his conscience. Every loving smile he gives his wife is deeply tainted by the horrifying knowledge that the monster she fears most is lurking just out of sight, breathing the same coastal air. Finn's internal conflict is a tragic masterpiece of divided loyalties and desperate, naive hope. He is a healer by nature, a man who desperately wants to believe in the power of redemption, even for a woman with a history as blood-soaked and destructive as Sheila Carter's. His recent interactions with his biological mother had planted a dangerous seed of doubt in his mind, making him genuinely wonder if the steadfast love of Deacon Sharp had truly transformed her into a safe, functioning member of society. Yet, Finn also intimately knows the dark depths of Steffi's trauma. He knows that the mere mention of Sheila's name is enough to trigger severe post-traumatic stress disorder in his wife, sending her into a spiral of panic and fear. By choosing to lie, Finn genuinely believed he was shielding Steffi from unnecessary distress, preserving the sanctity of their European escape. He tragically failed to realize that in the world of the Forresters and the Finnegans, a lie of omission is a ticking time bomb, and Sheila Carter is the one gleefully holding the detonator. Meanwhile, Sheila Carter prowls the luxurious, cobblestone streets of Monaco like a starving predator in paradise. The vibrant colors of the Riviera, the multi-million-dollar yachts, and the breathtaking architecture are entirely lost on her. Her entire focus is laser-targeted on the family she believes is rightfully hers by blood. Sheila knows that mere words will never be enough to break through the ironclad fortress of Steffi's hatred and fear. She has dropped to her knees, she has shed genuine tears, she has signed divorce papers to prove her sanity, and still, Steffi has fiercely, violently rejected her. As Sheila watches Finn and Steffi from the shadows, a dark, brilliant, and terrifyingly manipulative plan begins to take shape in her mind. If Steffi will not accept her as a reformed, peaceful woman, then Steffi must be forcefully manipulated into accepting her as a savior. Sheila understands that shared trauma binds people together just as strongly as love, and she is an absolute master at orchestrating trauma for her own benefit. The execution of Sheila's masterstroke takes place along the treacherous, breathtaking cliffs that overlook the Mediterranean Sea. Steffi, seeking a moment of quiet reflection away from the bustling city center, finds herself near a precarious edge. The jagged rock sand crashing, violent waves far below serve as a stark reminder of nature's unforgiving power. It is here that Sheila stages a meticulously calculated, incredibly dangerous accident, a scenario designed with chilling precision to push Steffi to the very brink of disaster. The sudden, terrifying slip of a shoe, the adrenaline-fueled panic, the sickening, stomach-dropping realization that a fatal fall is imminent, it all unfolds with heart-stopping speed. Just as Steffi stares into the terrifying abyss, preparing for the end, a strong hand grabs her, pulling her back from the edge of oblivion with desperate, bruising, undeniable force. The physical and emotional shock of the moment leaves Steffi paralyzed on the solid, safe ground, her breath coming in ragged, painful gasps as she slowly realizes who has just saved her life. It is not Finn, who is miles away, nor is it a random heroic stranger passing by. It is Sheila Carter, the woman who once shot her and left her for dead in a dark, filthy alley in Los Angeles. The sheer cognitive dissonance of the situation hit Steffi like a physical blow to the chest. The monster who haunts her darkest nightmares, the woman she has vehemently, aggressively banned from her family's life forever, has just risked her own physical safety to pull Steffi back from a fatal plunge. The warm Mediterranean sun beats down on them, but Steffi feels entirely cold, her traumatized mind violently rejecting the reality of what has just transpired while her trembling body processes the undeniable truth of her survival. The confrontation that immediately follows on the secluded Monaco beach is a terrifying masterclass in psychological manipulation. Instead of gloating, demanding immediate access to her grandson, or holding the rescue over Steffi's head, Sheila collapses into the warm sand. Her face is buried in her hands as she unleashes a torrent of seemingly genuine, agonizing, soul-crushing tears. She plays the role of the broken, desperate, misunderstood mother to absolute perfection. Sheila swears on her own life that she has completely changed, that her overwhelming love for Finn and baby Hayes has burned away all the darkness, violence, and obsession in her soul. She tells Steffi, her voice cracking with manufactured grief, that she didn't follow them across the world to cause harm, but because she simply could not bear the thought of existing in a universe where she is forever exiled from her own flesh and blood. This tearful, dramatic display on the beach is arguably the most dangerous weapon Sheila has ever wielded in her long history of terror. As Steffi listens to the desperate sobs of the woman who just saved her life, a terrifying, microscopic crack begins to form in her ironclad resolve. Steffi's severe post-traumatic stress disorder is warring violently with her innate sense of gratitude, fairness, and human decency. How can she maintain a stance of absolute, uncompromising hatred against someone who just proved their willingness to sacrifice themselves for her safety? The psychological torment is excruciating for Steffi. She finds herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Sheila's capacity for evil, wondering if the impossible has actually happened, if the monster has truly been tamed by the overwhelming power of maternal love and a desire for family. The wavering of Steffi's loyalty to her own strict boundaries is exactly what Sheila was counting on when she orchestrated the cliffside terror. This is the first, crucial step in Sheila's dangerous, long-term plan of possession. By creating a massive life debt, Sheila has essentially forced her foot into the heavy door of the Finnegan household. She knows that Steffi's conscience, no matter how traumatized, will not allow her to simply discard or imprison the woman who physically saved her from the cliff. The beach confrontation transforms rapidly from a scene of historical hostility into a twisted, emotional hostage situation where Steffi is held captive by her own gratitude and profound confusion. Sheila's tearful vows of reform are the invisible chains that will slowly, methodically bind the Finnegan family to her will. However, the illusion of Sheila's redemption faces an immediate, explosive, and furious obstacle in the form of Ridge Forrester. Ridge, who is also in Monaco enjoying a romantic getaway with Brooke Logan, quickly learns of the near-fatal incident and Sheila's shocking involvement. Unlike Steffi, whose judgment is clouded by the adrenaline and shock of the moment, Ridge sees the situation with crystal clear, cynical, and protective clarity. He knows Sheila's bloody history intimately, he knows her boundless capacity for theatrical manipulation, and he vehemently, aggressively opposes any attempt at reconciliation or softening. Ridge's arrival on the beach scene is like a violent thunderclap, shattering the fragile, highly emotional atmosphere Sheila has so carefully and deliberately cultivated. Ridge's protective fury is absolute, uncompromising, and terrifying to behold. He physically pulls Steffi away from Sheila, placing his own broad body between his vulnerable daughter and the woman he considers a psychotic, irredeemable threat. Ridge fiercely argues that the entire accident was a staged manipulation, a calculated, sick stunt designed specifically to play on Steffi's emotions and bypass her carefully constructed defenses. He loudly reminds Steffi of the bullet she took, of the agony their family has endured for decades, and insists that a leopard never changes its spots, no matter how many crocodile tears it sheds on a French beach.